Well, hello and welcome. It's 2 o'clock. And I said I'm going to start at 2 and we're going to go until we're done. I don't know what I told you. Maybe it was 4 or 4:30. I don't remember. But I'm so pleased you're here. And I'll introduce myself as Susan Graham. Most of you actually know me. Some of you have brought guests, which is lovely. I'm just absolutely pleased to be able to spend this time with you, because it's a joy for me. First of all, I just love doing what I do, as you all know that, because you're my clients. And it really is fun to help people in planning, and then when everything, pardon me, goes to hell in a handbasket, when somebody becomes seriously ill or is gone. We have wonderful people who are going to speak today. When you came, you were handed a green folder, and it has an agenda on one side, and we're going to go in that order. And there's a lot of stuff in this handout. Now, the things I'm going to talk about, but I'm the last one to speak. So if you want to listen to me, you got to hang out for the whole time. At the very bottom of the right side, there's a page for notes, so that's something that you can write whatever you need to write on. But on the other side, on the left side, are materials that are provided by the different speakers. Now, I cheated. For Washington Trust Bank, we have a lovely speaker from Spokane. And I didn't know if you had a handout or not, so I took an article from the New York Times about people trying to scam seniors. We make a wonderful target because we have money and we're not very astute when it comes to all this technology stuff. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily you, but many people, my cousin Kathy, if somebody called her on the phone, she was so thrilled to talk to anybody. And I'd say, hang up the phone, Cousin Kathy. And she just, oh, that's rude. I can't do that. I would go next to her and just push the little button to hang up the phone. But, anyway, so he's going to talk about that. Let me introduce the speakers. And the first speaker is Brian Brodowski, this lovely man over here. And he's going to be talking about people being scammed, which isn't nice. There are other people from Washington Trust Bank. One is Kamala Strickland. And where are you, Kamala? You're someplace here. She's way in the back. Lovely lady. And she has an assistant, Brandon Gordy, who is also there. Amy can't come. She's got some other crises going on. I have invited people to talk about end of life. Now, this is a guarantee. We were all born. That was nice. And we're all going to die. That's absolutely a guarantee. Mr. Simplot said he wasn't going to die, but see, that didn't work for him either. So when it comes to dying, we would all like what's called a good death, meaning let's do it nicely, not have it be difficult. So there's some people here today who are going to talk about end-of-life choices in Idaho. And one of them is Christine Souza. Where are you, Christine? If you'd stand up, please. She's going to be one of the speakers. And then there's also Karen Midlow. These both are death doulas. They have birth doulas. Well, there's death doulas, the beginning and the end. They're going to talk. Then there's care management. As we get along, we sort of fall apart. It's like a car, the headlight goes out, the fender drops off, all that sort of stuff. And I don't care how many vitamins you take or how many times you touch your toes and all that sort of stuff, and only eat green vegetables and kale. That's a dreadful vegetable. Anyway, so when it comes to that, sometimes you need to make some other changes. I had a woman who's 93, and her 2 sons came to talk to me this morning. She can't live alone anymore, even though she thinks she's doing fine. She says, oh, I drive, and I cook my meals, and I clean my house. Well, it turns out she doesn't do any of those things, and the sons are here to try to help her. There are people called care managers who help you sort through, okay, what kind of help do I need in the home? When is that appropriate? What other places are more appropriate, like memory care or so forth? And they can help you figure that out and hire the right people and provide guidance for that. So I have Dee Childers here from Life Changes, and this is the lovely lady back there who lives so dramatically that she actually has gray-white hair and a blue streak. I myself can't handle. When I was in college, I had a friend who wanted to be blonde, so anyway, I washed her hair with whatever this goo was in the sink, and I said to her, your hair is purple. And she started screaming. It actually rinsed out, but that's why I don't have the courage, as Dee does, because I think I can't ever rinse it out. Anyway, and also Brooke Roche is also here with her. They're going to talk about professional care managers. Then The last time, the last section is going to be Sean Beck, who's going to talk about, our government. I guess they tried to do their best, but they really were kind of stupid in a whole bunch of things. And one was having atomic blasts go off and thinking, isn't this cool? Let's all look at that and see, oh, look at that cloud. So what happened is, Hanford and down the Southwest, they blew up a few bombs during World War II, trying to see what they could do. And because of that, the radiation blew over Idaho, and there are a lot of people in Idaho who have cancer because of that. And there's actually now a federal program that will pay $100,000 for people who have suffered from that disaster. And Sean, are you here? He said he had to do a conference call, so he may not be here. Anyway, he's going to talk about that. He's a lovely attorney who handles that. And then, of course, you get stuck with me at the end where I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of changes. Now, if you like, the speakers, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just trying to keep this moving along, and also less is more sometime. I mean, if I talked for 3 hours about something, your eyes would glaze over instantly after about 10 minutes. If you need to speak or would love to speak to these people, indicate that. And you can visit with them at the end, or you could also indicate that on a green sheet I have at the bottom, and someone will reach out to you. So, and please help yourself. There's plenty of lovely food back there and beverages, and I'm so pleased you're here. Thank you so much. So, Brian, if you would come up and share what you have to share. Thank you.
My name is Brian Brodowski. I am with Washington Trust Bank. My presentation begins with fraud stops with you. That's my most important message that I'm going to deliver today, is that you have the power to stop fraud from happening to yourself. I'm the Director of Financial Crimes at Washington Trust Bank. I have a staff of 26 people. 26 people who monitor transactions every day, who work with our customers every day to prevent fraud, to intercede with fraud, and unfortunately, we have fraud that happens to our customers, and we work with them to recover lost and stolen funds. I would like to say we're more successful at the latter part, but unfortunately, we find out too late to do a lot of recovery, but when we do find out early enough, we work very diligently to recover our customers' funds. So I'm going to just do a couple little have you ever. Have you ever received a wrong number text, and it's someone that you don't know, you don't recognize the phone number, and they're just asking you a general question? How are you? Are you there? Did I miss your phone call? And what they're doing is they're trying to get you to respond, to interact with you in some type of social engineering scheme to get information out of you. Have you ever got an urgent text that claims to be from your bank? And you'll notice that the phone number that's showing up on your phone doesn't recognize, it's not one that you recognize, and most likely it's one that's out of your area code. It always has an urgent warning to contact them right away, and also to click on the little hyperlink. How about a phone call that is notifying you that your credit card or your debit card or your savings account or your investment account has been breached, and you must do some things very quickly and provide them with your username and logon information so they can log into your account and help you out? How about, it's tax season, here we are. Be aware of scams that will be coming at you from text messages, from emails, from phone calls about some type of tax return error or some scare tactic or threat to get you to provide personal information to the fraudster on the phone. These are things that are going to be happening and that are already happening, and you should be aware about. Now, how did we get to this point where we're having all these scammers going after us? Well, over the last 15 years, there have been data breaches across the country and across the world where you have records that have been obtained by fraudsters, by state-sponsored criminal organizations, by countries that are unfriendly to the United States. They have obtained your name, your date of birth, your social security number, your username, your password. They've obtained information about any social media accounts that you may have that were involved in that data breach. All that information is for sale right now on the dark web. The dark web is a euphemism for that part of the internet where illegal activity occurs. You typically never see that because your web browser never goes there. You have to have a specific kind of web browser to go there. And if you have that specific kind of web browser and you're using it, you also fall under some surveillance by our friendly federal law enforcement agencies. So let's look at some things that have happened through third quarter of 2025. This is from the Federal Trade Commission. They are the ones who collect information about fraud, and fraud reports go to them. Through third quarter of 2025, we've had 1.6 million total fraud, identity theft, and other reports that have gone to the FTC. It's important to note, these are the numbers of reports that have gone to the FTC. Figure about roughly half never go there. So that gives you an idea of the type of fraud that we are being bombarded with. Identity theft, the barcode in orange, is the most prevalent type of fraud that is happening. Oops. Come on, you, cooperate. There we go. All right, fraud types by age group. So you can look at the different age groups that we have here. The most important one that I have there is highlighted in blue, age group 70 to 79. You can see that the barcode with the amount of per incident of fraud is one of the higher ones. And the most common type of fraud contact method for people in this age group is over the phone. Social media comes in a close second, and the most common type of payment method that fraud is committed on is your credit card. So they're contacting you by phone. They are doing social engineering, meaning that they are asking you questions then to get information out of you, and then when they commit the fraud, they're asking you to use your credit card to make payments. The median loss, where half above, half below, is $1,000. That's the median loss for this type of fraudulent activity. In Idaho, as a general for Idaho, the FTC data through third quarter of 2025, 3,000 fraud attempts, $9 million in total losses, $297 per median dollar loss. And then if you look in the Boise metro area, we're down to 258 incidents per 100,000 population. The top fraud categories are imposter scams. An imposter scam is where somebody calls you on the phone and they pretend that they are from your bank, or they're from a law enforcement agency, or they're from some other type of government agency that is then telling you that you have an outstanding debt, or you've missed your jury duty, or you have a tax obligation, and they're sending the federal authorities to arrest you, and you need to go get money to pay them off, basically. So this leads us to the question, all these different types of payment modalities that you have on your person, are they safe? Are credit cards and debit cards, are they safe? Checks, right? Checks are still with us. People still write checks. Might surprise you that check is the #1 type of fraud that I see, check fraud. It's still out there. Once upon a time, many years ago, when I was working for the Federal Reserve Bank, there was a study in 1997 by Alice Rivlin, who was a governor of the board of, she was a governor for the Federal Reserve Board. And her study was about checks and whether or not checks were going away, primarily because debit cards were just coming out in 1997. And there was a large uptake in the number of debit card users. And the Federal Reserve, as you may or may not know, processes checks and sends them throughout the country for banks so that those checks can get to banks. And that was a big part of the activity of the Federal Reserve Board, or the Federal Reserve banks. So her study was that checks are going away. And here we are, nearly 30 years later, and we still have checks, and they're still being written. So are they safe? Yes, they're safe. However, the #1 thing you need to do if you're writing checks is to monitor your checking account. Do that at least every month when you get your statement in the mail to see if the check that you wrote went to the right person, was payable for the right amount, and there wasn't any changes to it. If you can identify your checks as quickly as possible they're fraudulent, you won't suffer any losses. If you let it go for more than 60 days, you're probably going to suffer a loss. So we have payment apps like Venmo and Cash App. Those are on your handy dandy phone. You can use those to pay people. There are certain obligations that you have to do when you use a payment app, and you can be at risk for losing money you send through a payment app if you don't understand how that payment is authorized, or if somebody tricks you into authorizing it. So be very careful about using payment apps. If you don't understand them, don't use them. Wire transfers, bill pay, and online banking. So all of those types of payment methods are safe. You just have to be careful to understand how to use it, and also careful about monitoring your accounts to understand anything that happened that you're not aware of. And when you monitor your account, you need to do it at least monthly. At least go through your account monthly to make sure you recognize everything that's happening. So what kind of trends are we seeing at Washington Trust Bank? So ACH fraud is the #1 fraud by dollar losses. ACH fraud means that somebody has tricked you into sending money to them via an ACH, an electronic payment. That's the #1 by dollar losses. Check fraud is the #1 by occurrences. I see more check fraud than any other type of fraud. Elder fraud goes across multiple fraud modalities. So elder fraud goes across ACH, it goes across check, it goes across wire fraud. So we see elder fraud. Wire fraud is the #1 loss by average dollar loss. That's the #1 fraud. And you can imagine that wire fraud is that because wire fraud, or wires, you can send large amounts of money, and it's very difficult to recover a wire once it's been sent. The reason for that is the way that the laws are written surrounding wires. You have to authorize the wire, and there are steps to go through to make sure that the information you provide is correct. So you have to be very careful about sending wires, and when someone is asking you to send it, make very certain that you know where it's going and who it's going to. So there are some things that banks will never ask you. A bank is never going to ask you to open a link that you've received on your cell phone. They're never going to ask you to open a link that you've received on an email. They're never going to call you on the phone and say, I've just sent you an email with a link, please click it so I can authenticate you. A bank is never going to ask you to keep a conversation secret, okay? A fraudster is going to do that. A fraudster is going to coach you on what to say. They're going to tell you when you go to the bank, have me on the phone so I can tell you what to say when the bank asks you questions. A bank is never going to do that. A bank is never going to call you on the phone and tell you that there's been fraud on your account, and please give me your username and your password for your online banking account. Bank will never do that. And a bank is never going to call you and pressure you to log on and send money to them via a payment app. Those are all different kinds of fraud that we have seen that, unfortunately, our senior citizen customers have fallen victim to. So what kind of fraud do we typically see? Friends and family scams. This is where someone who claims to know a member of your family calls to say, your grandson was visiting Mexico and got arrested and is now in jail, and they need you to post bail. Or they may take an audio recording of your grandson or granddaughter or child, or even you, and use AI, artificial intelligence, to create that voice talking to you, where somebody reads or they type a script into an AI agent with the recording of your loved one, and that AI agent creates that conversation with you. That is a very real scam that's going on. So how do you address this? Well, first of all, stop. Hang up the phone and call your loved one and talk to them in person. You could also have certain types of pre-agreed conversations or memories that you can ask your loved one if they remember what happened. A fraudster is not going to know that. There are a lot of ways that you can defeat the fraudster, but the most important thing you can do is hang up the phone and not engage with them. So Stop and check it out and call your loved one and have an independent conversation so that you can put your mind at rest that nothing's going on that you need to be concerned about and you're no longer engaging with a fraudster. So we talked about government imposter scams. So someone who claims to be from a federal or law enforcement agency calls you and tells you that your tax bill is past due, or there is an error on your county tax records, or your anything at all that you can imagine that they can come up with. You missed your jury duty and now you are being fined and they're going to come arrest you and put you in jail. And what you need to do is go to the Walmart and get some Apple gift cards to pay your fee or your fine. So that's what these kind of scams do, and that's what they're looking for. Again, just disengage and hang up the phone. Romance scams, if you've ever met anyone on Facebook, if you're looking to meet somebody on Facebook and they meet you, and now they would like, after a long conversation and several conversations with you, they mention they have an investment idea for you, or they need money because there's a problem. Again, don't keep those things secret. Discuss it with loved ones, let them know what's going on, and talk to them about what you're being asked to do. But the message there is don't ever send money to someone you've never met in person. Verify, verify, verify. Best practices. If it's too good to be true, it is. Keep track of your money, know your transactions, look at your accounts, review your accounts, make sure payments that are going out are things that you recognize. Look at your check images. The days of where you get your check images back are gone, but you can go in your account and you can look at check images. Make sure you look at the check image to make sure it went to the right person and it was paid for the right amount. If you have any hesitation or questions at all, call your branch manager at the local branch you go to. Talk to a trusted person. If you are a victim of fraud, the most important thing you can do is call your bank immediately. Let them know that you've been a victim of fraud and how it happened, and let them know that you need to put a stop payment on, or they can work with you to change your accounts and make sure it doesn't continue to go on. Reach out to local law enforcement, file a police report. Protect yourself. The most important thing you can do is stop. Don't engage with a fraudster. Don't talk to them on the phone. Remember, they can be recording your voice so that they can use that in their AI module to then create transactions with your voice authorizing things. So don't engage with them. Most importantly, practice good computer hygiene. Don't have the same name, username and password for everything you do. Make sure you have unique ones. Make sure that you change your passwords on a routine basis. And never, ever, ever send money to someone you have never met in person. All these things can help protect you. My message to you today, fraud stops with you. And if you become a victim of fraud, as quickly as you possibly can, contact your bank and let them know. Very good. Thank you.
Okay, my staff is really great. Thank you very much, Brian, for your presentation. We've had a number of clients come to us who've had money stolen from them because of this fraudulent stuff. I think it's shame on them, but you know, they make more money being crooks than they do getting a decent job, so they have an incentive. Brian's available for questions, and also Kamala's available. Washington Trust Bank has a super duper trust department. That means they help you manage your money, or when somebody's really ill or they died, they can help handle managing the money and distributing the assets out. So just letting you know, talk to them if you want to go with that further. My staff did a great job for me. They gave me this list of everybody who's here and to introduce them, and they thought I would remember that they have names and I could introduce them without them being written down on this, which of course I could not remember. So I am going to introduce my staff to you. There's Terry Klug in the back. She's been with me a long time, very helpful to me. Janet. Janet's the one who answers the phone most of the time, Janet Angel, and she again is all of these people are wonderful and make my life so much simpler. And then there's Sarah Kirko, who is new to us, and about, I don't know, 6 months, 10 months, whatever. She's doing a great job as well. And DR, she likes to be called DR. She really has a lovely name, Danielle. But she doesn't like Danielle, so we use DR, and she's also been extraordinarily helpful. And as an aside, you've met my dog. I always have dogs. Now I have Willie, and they are so sweet. They take him for a walk twice a day, so I'm very fortunate. One other thing, again, please feel free to ask questions of these people later on, or we can do that at the end in an open forum if you like. This is being recorded. I let you know that when I sent that invitation because many people can't come, and we wanted to have this on our website for them to watch. And lastly, there's a green sheet in there. If you want to visit with any of these people, just indicate that. We'll share that information with them, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about end-of-life choices in Idaho. You know, when people come talk to me and we talk about all kinds of things, I'm so honored that they're willing to share so much information with me on such a fast pace of our conversations. And I talk about what nobody will talk about with you privately. You know, they maybe privately, maybe not. Your kids are not going to talk to you about when you're dead or when you're dying. They don't want to talk about your burial plans because they feel like they're digging the hole and trying to get you into it a little bit too early. So they just don't want to talk about this stuff because in polite society, who does? Well, sorry, we all, 100% of us die. And can we make it as good as we can for the person who is passing as well as the family? I mean, these are really important things. We used to hide them in we used to deal with them in our culture. We hide them now. When I was a little girl, my grandparents died. My parents didn't even tell me. Not until I was a teenager. And then it was kind of like shocking. But they didn't want to impose death on me, which was like, are you stupid? You know, you learn by role models. You learn by how do other people respond to these, so you have some skills when it comes to your turn to deal with that in helping others or dealing it with for yourself. So these ladies are grand. These two ladies are truly called death doulas. They'll tell you what all that's about. And so I'm going to have Christine and Karen come and talk with you about end-of-life choices in Idaho, what those opportunities are. Okay, thank you.
Well, we are very, very grateful to be here with you today and to talk about a topic that lots of people don't want to talk about, but we're going to talk about voluntary different choices in Idaho. There are choices if you are terminally ill, and so we want to share those with you. Unfortunately, Dr. Jessica Everett had an emergency, and so she is not with us, and she sends her regards, and her information is in your packet. Christine Souza is a lead trainer for the Doula Givers Institute, and she's also the director of the Idaho and Pacific Northwest, and then my name is Karen Midlow. I am also a certified end-of-life doula along with a certified grief educator, and I work for Ancora Health, which is a hospice, palliative, and house calls local company here in Idaho.
You can just always hit this down button. Do you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, you want to go ahead?
You go ahead.
First of all, in your packet, you will see this amazing document that Susan has prepared. Susan is so generous with all of her materials and her website. It is such a gift to so many people. And the fact that she's already got this ready and it is in your handout. Okay. So, we don't want to do all the talking here. We need to wake you guys up a little bit. All right, perfect. Just making sure there. So, curious, what is a good death mean to you? Just shout it out. At home. What else? Being logistically and spiritually prepared. Love it. A+. What else? I know I don't want to be a burden to my children. I want to have everything done so they don't have to do it. What else does a good death look like? Pain-free. Good answer.
That's my favorite.
Me too.
I'm not into suffering.
Yeah, no suffering, and that's available. What else? No unfinished business. Thank you. Having everything handled, all your conversations had, forgiveness, all of those things. What else? Anything else? All right, let's see. We'll take you and show you a list of some of the things that, and some of the people said some of these answers. A sense of control, dignity, privacy. So guess what? Guess what's the number one fear in our culture right now? Dying. Death is the number one fear. Used to be public speaking, and then COVID came along. And here we are. And as Susan said, everything's been pushed back into the corner and people don't want to talk about it. So we want to talk about it because, as you all know, we are going to all go. So I'm going to pass it over to Christine.
Such good conversations to start off with. You know, I think right? I know we never get invited to parties. However, we're pretty fun, and what we do describe ourselves as not only being death doulas, we actually call ourselves life doulas, because really we want to help remember to have a really good life until we take our last breath. And so how do we do that? That is in the plan and preparation of how we can create a guide book on how we can all have a much softer landing. So as we were mentioned before, Susan was mentioning this, that death was revered as a sacred rite of passage. Like, we all know how to do this. 100 years ago, everybody died at home. It was a communal event. Family was invited, the community was invited, and somehow, some way, a few decades ago, we have medicalized death, and it has become something to be feared. And so I'm not sure quite what happened. There's many, many reasons I can think of, but that is kind of the reality, that there is this death-denying society, like it's not going to happen. And it is, I used to say there were two things that are guaranteed, taxes and death. People are kind of wiggling out of their taxes, so I feel like death really for sure is the only guarantee in life. So what has happened, though, is we have been, by all of these amazing medical advances, we are living longer, and it's amazing. But the average length of a man's life is 78, and women's is 81. So we're living much longer. But with that, our health concerns and issues as we age. And so we're always talking about quality of life. So this sentence, keeping people alive and living, are two very different things. And so I think that's the beautiful thing that Susan brings into this conversation, is really allowing to help empower you, to let you know that you actually have more choices at the end of life than you realize. And that's what one of the roles the doulas offer, is just helping to explain what is happening and the choices, because you have a choice. We always have a choice. So why are we so afraid? You know, sometimes it could be, you know, in Susan's case, she shared, you know, having lost a grandmother and not even knowing that had happened. That really sets us up for, it informs us on how we navigate death and dying later on in our life. I also feel like we need to reframe our language around death and dying. I see so many times in obituaries and other items, you know, she lost her battle to cancer. You know, she fought till the end. And in my mind, if death is a battle, then we're all gonna lose, right? So really begin to reframe and think about that, that maybe it isn't such a battle. Maybe we're all really trying hard to stay alive. But I think when decisions are made in a time of fear, sometimes those choices are made that you probably wouldn't have made those choices if you weren't in a fearful state. I don't know if you guys watched The Pit, but it's an amazing show on HBO Max, and it has a lot of these beautiful scenarios, these emergency scenarios, which are oftentimes where people make those decisions made out of fear, when you can help support your family and yourself making these decisions way beforehand and not in a medical crisis, can really set for a much softer landing. So Dr. Jessica Evert, which we love, we're big groupies of Dr. Evert. These are her slides, and she is a board-certified palliative care physician and just an amazing human being, and she talks about the proposed trajectories of dying. And as you can see in the slide, there is folks that have an immediate, sudden death, and so they are maintaining their lifestyle, and then they have a tragic or sudden death. The next one is a terminal illness, such as a cancer diagnosis, let's say. So typically a person will get their terminal diagnosis. Hopefully, if they are managed well with pain and other symptoms that they're having, they will continue to be fairly stable. And then typically what happens is that they will have a pain crisis, and then typically there will be a downhill decline that's pretty steady. This isn't always true for everyone, but this is typically what the medical team will notice. Organ failure, like liver failure or kidney disease, end-stage kidney disease. Someone will, maintain, and then there will be a hospitalization. They'll come back to return to not quite baseline, and then something will happen, and then they will decline, be put in the hospital, but they never truly return back to their baseline. So it's kind of this up and down, but it's a continuous, slow, steady decline. Not always, but that's typically what we see. And then also we see folks with Alzheimer's and dementia, and that is kind of a up and down roller coaster that can be really challenging. Sometimes a fall or some kind of injury will cause a sudden death, a steep decline. And then frailty, and then that is just what happens with old age, failure to thrive, and just our parts wear out, right? So just our hearts get tired and our lungs get tired, and so they are weak and they just have a pretty steady decline until they have their end-of-life experience. So what does that tell the medical professionals? It's as clear as mud to them, to be honest. They are doing the very best they can, but they do notice these trends in caring for their patients. Some of the trickier ones are ALS, heart failure, kidney failure, dementia, stroke, and severe persistent mental illness. There are things that they can treat and help support people. ALS is one of the most challenging because they're typically, their life expectancy is rather short and need a tremendous amount of supportive care. So the advance directive that is available in the state of Idaho and other states, it's not very clear with the language, and I think that's where the confusion lies. And so currently, they're in the process of actually working this document that I have an incurable injury, disease, illness, or condition, and a medical doctor who has examined me has certified, one, that such injury, disease, illness, or condition is terminal, and that the application of artificial life-sustaining procedures would serve only to prolong artificially my life, and that my death is imminent whether or not artificial life-sustaining procedures are utilized, or I have been diagnosed being in a persistent vegetative state. Those are kind of the qualifications on which direction to go with your plan of treatment. And I think that there are so many different variables that happen that we don't always meet that criteria, but there's an and but. So when someone doesn't make any medical condition or medical decisions, this is what happens. And oftentimes there are people that are in the, they don't have their advanced care documents done, and they have an event that happens, either a health event, a car accident, stroke, heart attack. By law, the emergency technicians are there to resuscitate and bring you back. If they do bring you back, this is what the situation looks like in the ICU. And I know so many nurses and doctors that have conversations at the bedside asking, what is it that your mom and dad, what would they want? And if you haven't had your advanced care planning documents completed and the conversations had with your family, your family, your loved ones are going to be in a place of fear and do everything. Unfortunately, bringing someone back from a catastrophic event they typically don't always come back to the baseline of where they were. And so we begin to explore, what does quality of look like for you? And so expensive, traumatic, painful, all of these scenarios happen. And so that's why we beg people to really consider, do your homework and get your advanced care planning done today. So variations that happen when making decisions, sometimes the doctor's opinions or can actually influence the outcome. Sometimes the healthcare workers have personal biases. What can be offered? Oftentimes people say, well, what would you do in this case? And so we have to, as medical professionals, be mindful about the information that we are sharing. But I think everyone has a different opinion of what quality of life looks like. And I think that's so unique to each of us. We all get to choose what quality of life looks like. So there's also bias in what doctors will disclose in terms of outcomes and likely state of being. So in a vague, my husband has a cancer diagnosis, and they say, oh, there's a 5 to 10% chance this will happen, and you never think you're that 5 or 10%, right? And so what would that look like, being the 5 to 10% of the outcomes, undesired outcome? There's also personal beliefs and trust in healthcare. People have some biases on that. Tolerance of a highly medicalized life. People are just used to going to the doctor and having these procedures and surgeries. And then it's a decision, what would I do in the moment? And that changes everything. And you get to, when you have your advanced care planning, you get to choose. You get to change your mind. You always get to change your mind. So you get to have control in your treatment. You can decide today if you want full, we call it in the medical field, full code. Like, I want everything, and I'm pretty much a full code. So if I have a heart attack right here, please help try to save me. So please bring me back. Some folks have chose do not resuscitate, and so that is a choice. And voluntary stopping in eating and drinking is something that we will be talking about briefly, and then medical aid in dying, which is something that is not legal in the state but is legal in Oregon. So quality of life, when we talk about it, doc, when can I mend the fence? When I can't mend the fence, don't give me more any medication or send me to the hospital. That's a pretty strong statement. So people can choose by, I'm sure many people have heard what medical aid in dying, it's legal in 12 states. Someone has to have a prognosis in 6 months or less. But what is legal in Idaho is VSED, which is voluntary stopping in eating and drinking. It is a legal option to hasten death. It mimics the natural dying process. There is no terminal diagnosis required, and you do have to have capacity. And the natural dying process would usually be typically from 3 to 14 days. And it requires a system, an absolute system, to be able to support people. I do not recommend anyone trying this by themselves. But if you have a terminal diagnosis, this is a legal option. So the legal justifications for this, for VSED, is you have the right to refuse life-sustaining medical treatments, and you do not have to be forced to have artificial eating, feeding to extend your life. So there's different methods of the actual dying process, of the actual mimicking of the dying process, that it's not painful. It actually puts someone in a very sleepy state, and it can actually be a very soft and gentle process. So having a strong team, strong VSED team, and a board-certified palliative care doctor that will walk you through this. And we can talk more about this. I want to finish off with Karen.
Thank you. 20 minutes goes so fast, and there's so much to tell you and throwing all this information at you, but we want you to know what things are available. There's some things that you can receive. People are so afraid to talk about palliative care and hospice, but there are some really wonderful things that are offered. So palliative care, the way I like to describe it, is basically a palliative care doctor is the conductor of the symphony, works with all the doctors and oversees things to make sure that your life is being run in the trajectory that you would like it to be run in. There are some commonalities between hospice and palliative care, which are here on the slide. The question, how long do people really live on hospice? And afterwards, I would love for you to come by and see Christine and I, and we can play the death deck with you, which is a really fun game to have people start having conversations about end of life. How long do people really live? Most people are on hospice for 24 days. That's the average stay. It's less than 4 weeks from when they were enrolled. And the timing shapes the hospice experience. What happens is people wait too long, they don't understand the benefits of hospice and the team that's available. Hospice isn't about giving up. It's about arriving in time to provide the support that is needed to navigate the end of life. So many of us think that once we go on hospice, it's the end. We actually have parties when people graduate, because people do go off hospice, because they've had somebody looking after them, getting their medicines under control, and then eventually they do come back, but we do have people that go off hospice. So it's not such a horrible word. And we are out of time, so we have, Christine and I will be in the back. We'll answer some questions. We have a lot of materials for you. We have a lot of different classes that we're offering free to the community, because hope is not a plan. We're all going to die, but we want to give you the tools so that you can have the most successful death possible. Thank you so much.
I want to tell you, last week I got a call from a client. Her husband was seriously in the hospital, and the doctor kept pressuring her to do all these procedures for her husband, and he wasn't able to communicate effectively. They'd filled out the living will and the health power of attorney, and they called me because the family had had a meeting and didn't want to have further treatment. And the doctor just was insistent that this would be wonderful and it would help a lot. And she called me because the doctor continued to be insistent, and the family had had a meeting and said, no, father doesn't want this, my husband doesn't want this, stop. She called me because she was worried that she was going to be criminally liable if she decided to stop the treatment. And I mean, she was that concerned, which just appalled me. And I'm glad she called me, because of course she's not criminally liable. Just as these ladies were saying, you have the right to decline treatment. Just because somebody said you need to do this, well, too bad. That's nice. I'm happy for you, but that's not what I want. And I had another one just a few days ago. You know, I don't know. Maybe it's just because things come in waves. Maybe. And Janet tells me it's because the moon is going to be full or just past full. But again, it was the same sort of thing. The father had fallen down, had a serious fall, been very healthy, fell down, and ended up in the hospital, and they said, well, we can do this, that, and the other thing, you know, fix your ribs and do this, that, and the other thing. And he said no. He wasn't incompetent, and he wanted to go home. He said, I want to go home. Again, they insisted that he stay, and he said, no, I'm walking out of here, you know, in a wheelchair or whatever. Get me out of here. Take me home. He went home, and he died the next day. You know, and maybe they could have kept him going, which is fine. But again, that was not what he wanted. That's what this is all about. You get what you want. But you've got to be articulate about it. You just can't sort of mumble, oh, well, you figure it out later. No, that's terrible to kick that can down the road to your family. And you need to give the people the power to be able to be advocates for you when you're lying there, because you can't communicate, because you're too ill to start doing that kind of stuff. So I'm passionate about this because I really think people need to have control over their lives. I do not want somebody who is a total stranger to you making the decisions that are so important to you. So anyway, let's go on to the next one. Sorry, I'm using up other people's time. That's not polite. So we're going to now segue into, you know, you're so sweet to come and listen to me and these people talking, because I talk about stuff nobody will talk about in polite company. And this is so important. You just can't say, oh, well, I'll get to it some other day. What day is that going to be? Do you know the day you're going to die? And if you do, are you going to be able to put off all your planning until 1 week before, when you're finally going to get into my office with that kind of short notice? No, that doesn't happen. You know, you're going to be able to sign the documents that need to be signed before you die? No, that's what this is all about. You've got to be prepared ahead of time. So the next part is professional care managers. I'm going to tell you about my cousin Kathy again, the woman who kept talking and talking, because anybody who called her, she was so thrilled somebody wanted to talk to her. Anyway, she ended up having dementia. Now, she lived in Cincinnati. She was my father's first cousin, sweet lady. It was my privilege to help her. She had no children. She lived in Cincinnati. I could never get her to move here. She moved into, finally into a nursing home. She was in independent living, then assisted living, and then nursing home. Well, I can't go see her all the time. I'm in Boise, Idaho. I would go see her 4 times a year. She had a friend from church who would go see her and go see her after church on Sundays. That was it. And that friend had the health power of attorney, but she couldn't get anybody to pay any attention on these meetings that you have with the staff in the facility about her care, those monthly meetings. So I hired a company just like these people, like Life Changes. They would go see her every week. My cousin Kathy liked cats, so there was a cat who wandered around in this place. They'd play with the cat. She'd look at the fish. They'd read cat books. They'd take her out for ice cream, and they were an advocate for her. They could see how her health was like. When she was dying, they were there every minute for the last couple of weeks, because I couldn't do that. I mean, these are how wonderful it is to have people who have the skills and the passion to step up for that. So anyway, these 2 ladies are going to talk to you about, those are called care managers, professional care managers. You don't always have a family member who's got enough brains and assertiveness to get done what needs to be done, and to be able to work with the medical people on a level that they will respect. So if you would both come up, there you are, over there. So this is Dee Childers and Brooke Roche, and they're with Life Changes. It's an elder care consulting company. So ladies, it's your turn.
So, good afternoon. I am Dee Childers, and I started Life Changes Elder Care Consulting 15 years ago when I was at that pivotal point with my parents, when I realized I'd been telling my sisters, things are changing with Mom and Dad, and we really need to do something. We need to read, we need to learn what's going on, and of course we didn't, and we waited until the very call or the situation occurred that we talked about at the very beginning, which was that our father was being exploited, and he was exploited over several $100,000 before we were able to get it stopped. So everything that you learned this morning is so important, or earlier is so important to take to heart. And then at that point in time, it was just the deep dive. Based on my background, I decided, well, all of the tools I create for myself, I could create and give to other families, and that's when I went and got certified as a care manager and started Life Changes. This is Brooke. Brooke has been with me for 7 or 8 years. 8 years that she's worked for me, but I worked for her for 9. So, in a different capacity, prior career. And so she is a senior care manager and the business manager for Life Changes, and really kind of runs the show for me these days so that I can step back and do some of the other things that I want to do in life. So we're going to talk. How many of you have ever heard of care management before? A few of you. And now you're probably hearing about them in the hospitals, because they're starting to use the term care manager too. And that's great and that's good, but typically those folks stop about 2 weeks after your hospitalization. And then what happens? So, and if my sister was here, she would say, I just counted your first so. All right. Okay, click on the slide. Yes. There we go. Very good. So the professional organization for care managers is called Aging Life Care, and this is a national organization. As I started to say, that care management is being used in other professions in other ways, so it's kind of helpful to understand geriatric care managers or aging life care manager. There's just a lot of folks that are referring to other kinds of situations that really don't do what we do, because we are there for the long haul. We're trained to do this, so there is a whole program that we go through, and a certification, and then just the real-time coaching and using each other. Like, we have a staff meeting every week, and we staff all of the clients that we need to, so we all know what's going on, but we learn from each other and what's going on and take advantage of the information, because we all come from different perspectives. As a member of Aging Life Care, we do have a strict code of ethics and standards of practice. For instance, We charge our clients directly. We do not take referral fees for anything that we do. So while we have partners that we like to work with, and we do tend to work with them more consistently, it's because they want our referrals, and so they give that benefit to our clients. And so they are always there on top of any issues. And just to be really clear, it's never going to be perfect. There always will be issues. It's how do you anticipate and prevent? And when you couldn't prevent, then how do you resolve the issue? So that's a big part about having a code of ethics, and the fact that it is in our code of ethics that we don't take referral fees for anything that we do. When we make a recommendation, it's because we know them to be good and very capable of providing the services that we have. And I just recognized it's Carrie. There's a number of you in the audience. It's like, okay, good to see you. So that was number 2. Thank goodness I have technical support. That's what she did before, and I was her human resources manager. So in a nutshell, Aging Life Care Managers, we provide peace of mind to our clients and to their families, and we work really hard to make sure that everyone is having and enjoying a quality of life. Is there something to
Select.
just select?
There's a hidden button in there.
There's a hidden button. Okay, very good. Well, thank goodness that Christine was willing to lend me her laptop because I only came with a flash drive. So thank you for this lovely computer. So what are the kinds of things that we do? Our focus is on enabling decisions to be made and supporting people in that process, and then implementing those decisions with a long view. So we might plan and focus short term, but we're going to then look at midterm and we're going to look at long term. So we're always going to deal with what the most immediate needs are, and they could be a transition from one level of care to another level of care. That's one of those times that people don't realize is real tricky. There's a lot of things that you don't know that we've learned over the course of time that we need to make sure happen when there's that transition in care. For example, you might assume that your medication list is going to make it to the rehab when you walk out the door and you walk in the next door, if you're going for some rehabilitation, that they have the medication list. I can tell you there's been any number of times where that hasn't happened, but we have our mental checklist and we know what kinds of things to prepare for to make sure that there is nothing that falls through the crack when there's a transition from one level of care to another. So same thing going up and back. The number of times that I have caught a medication error in the hospital is frightening. I had one client who, after we got out of the ED and moved up into the room, and they're starting to go through his meds list, and they're going, "Oh, it's time for your insulin." And I said, "No, he does not take insulin." They would have given him insulin had I not been there with him. And that was after doing the medication list in the emergency room. So somewhere between the emergency room and up on the floor, there was a medication error. So there's times that we just have to be real diligent, and that's the attention to detail is one of the key competencies for a care manager. So we're focused on serving both the senior and the family. We designate the senior as our client, typically, if we're working with both, but working with the family and making sure their needs are met and things that their needs are met and they're being heard are very important. So our focus is being very personalized and very strategic and full spectrum. So we look at tactically, what do we need to do to get things shored up, and then what do we need to do strategically in anticipating future problems and issues and being able to prevent them as much as possible. And if we're not able to prevent, then how do we immediately rectify them? So we also work with our clients because some of our clients have dementia. Some are in early stages of dementia versus longer stage. And so there's other ways to keep the senior connected to what's going on. And so we have had training on other decision styles or tools that are out there. For example, supportive decision making. If you don't have someone assigned to be your power of attorney and agent, and you need someone and there is no one, then you might have to go to the courts and have someone else make those decisions, and we want to prevent that as much as possible. So meeting with your attorney and having your documents complete and then having those conversations with family is so important. And also understanding that maybe on a day-to-day basis, you can't drive a car, but you still understand what makes quality of life for you. Then we would work with you using a supportive decision-making style to help pull out that information so that you're still in charge as much as possible. Need help? Yes, she does. So when needing a care manager, you want a person that understands how to find solutions to a problem and preferably prevent them right up front. So frequently we have an adult child that'll call because they're concerned with changes that they see in their aging parent and they don't know where to go next. Sometimes it's the senior themselves, either for themselves or for a partner, that they recognize they're having difficulty with and they need transition, they need help with those transitions. And sometimes it's a third party. Sometimes we have had neighbors call and say, my neighbor doesn't have anybody and we need you to come by and see what you can do. And we want to make sure no one falls through the cracks and that time is of the essence. And so we do that, we make sure to prevent that from happening. So it is good to know that you have us in your back pocket if and when you need us. Some examples are, and we're going to give you a couple ideas with clients, I'm worried about my mom. Lurk, can you give us an example of when that might happen, or when that's happened with us?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll share a couple different stories. One, we were contacted by a daughter who was an only child. She lives in the area with her mom and dad. And what she was looking for is a way to figure out what she didn't know and how to support her parents, and specifically how to help them remain in their home as long as possible and remain independent as long as possible, at the same time of addressing what she was seeing in her mom, who was the primary caregiver for her dad, who had a lot more significant chronic illness, was starting to show some signs of cognitive decline, and because she could just see that stress. And so what we did is we came together with them. We performed a comprehensive assessment. That's a meeting over several days to look at medical and health information, see if we could find any areas to provide some interventions there, make sure that they were prepared from a financial, legal standpoint, and to do a home safety assessment. When all was said and done, we were able to give them some interventions and resources that she, as the daughter, could implement, or as she opted to do, is actually have us do some of that, and to come on board as her emergency support. So we are on call 24/7 for her. She's now able to feel like her relationship as their daughter is preserved, and she knows that we're that resource that can come in and maybe bring up some more difficult things that need to be addressed by mom and dad, even though they don't want to have those discussions, and we can be the moderator of that. So she feels very comfortable with that, and now she gets to travel and see her kids that are in other states, and she feels that they're in good hands from that standpoint. Another situation is a daughter was coordinating her mom's care. She was living at home alone, pretty moderate cognitive decline, but was doing okay, and just needed some support in managing what medically was changing with her. So she brought us on board to visit frequently, start bringing in concierge medicine, so a provider that can come into her home, meet with her in a much better duration and in her home environment, and also to help coach and counsel the daughter on some very difficult dynamics with her sibling that's local, and helping her to understand how to navigate that. And both of those scenarios have been very successful for those daughters.
I go on to the next one. You've got all of our examples here.
Okay. I don't have anyone anymore, excuse me. This can be because someone maybe did not have children, or maybe there's some estrangement, or maybe they just don't want that burden and that responsibility to be on a child. So, examples here. We have a woman who, after losing her husband, living in a community, just needed some support. Even though she had stepchildren, did not really have a relationship built up with them that felt comfortable. So coming on board with her, helping her advocate for herself with the community, which is something that is absolutely necessary. The retirement communities can be very beneficial when it comes to having 24/7 response from caregiving or helping with medications, or even just providing an area where you can get activities and meals and things of that nature. And also, some people just need a little bit more advocacy. And so we've been able to provide that to her, have been able to see her gain some confidence in speaking up for herself and making sure she is able to verbalize what she wants. On a different example, it would be somebody who is living alone. Sons live out of state, a little bit estranged from that standpoint, and starting to feel the weight of taking care of a 2,000 square foot home and quite a big yard, and feeling a little bit isolated. So working through her to understand what scenarios she had available to her, evaluating, is that a community? Is that a over 55 apartment complex possibly, where there's a lot more activities and opportunities for social engagement? Assisted her in coordinating with a real estate agent so that she could get her home sold, get herself moved into that community, and now we're working to help her feel confident in reaching out and making those social connections, and also accompanying her to her medical appointments so that she feels seen by medical providers. So a couple different examples from that standpoint. Dad's memory isn't what it used to be. The example I'll share here is we came on board several years ago for actually what I would say a family. So a husband and wife who have been taking care of a adult disabled son for many years. They actually had created a certified family home that they were operating and taking care of him, and they were advancing in years and having more medical challenges and having some cognitive changes come into the scenario as well. Have an additional son that lives outside of the state, and so we came on board to help them make sure that they were meeting the needs that were necessary for their son, and to do some advanced planning of different scenarios. If this happens, then what will happen? What's the best thing that can happen in this case? So we were able to define that early on for them. We've been with them long enough to also be able to support them in the scenarios actually happening. The son did pass, and now the wife has needed to move into assisted living, and husband is still living at home. And there is some progressing cognitive change, had to work with him about the recommendation for driving retirement, and helping him understand that there are solutions available to him to still get him to and from to see his wife every day, to help check in on him regularly and make sure that he's still taking his medications as prescribed, identifying when things may be going. We identified there were some issues with that, and he hadn't been taking his blood pressure medication. So putting in a different intervention to make sure that he isn't missing that any longer. So that's another example of how we've helped families in the area.
Thank you, Brooke.
You betcha.
So basically, we support the whole family system, and we support them wherever they're at. I was thinking, when in 2020, when COVID happened, we were not able to get into the ED with our clients for 1 week, and that was about it. Past that time, the hospital staff was familiar enough and recognized how important it was to allow us to accompany our clients to the emergency room when that needed to, because they needed to go to the emergency room, because we had a lot of information that they were not going to get any other way. So we did not have a problem getting into the hospital. And I know there were a lot of people that were frustrated because they didn't have one of us on board to help with that. So that was another time that was really helpful. I'm going to leave that one right there. So one of the things that's, you have your own attorney. You have Susan Graham. She is fabulous. She's progressive. She's big picture thinking, and we so appreciate working with her and her clients. Sean, who's going to come up next, is another attorney that we love working with. There's a number in the Valley that we really enjoy. Then there's doctors, and they have their level of depth that, while Brooke and I love health and medical stuff, and we read a lot, we're still not medically trained. We're not capable of making diagnosis and the like. So there's specialists out there, but then there's the care manager, and we cover a broad spectrum. So we can review legal documents and tell you when there's a problem, if we see, the basic things that we're trained on, and then we send them to one of the attorneys we work with. We can challenge doctors when they're not looking at the big picture. That's actually one of our values, is courage. And people want to know, why do I need courage as a care manager? Well, because when that doctor walks up to you and stands over you, and most of us are women, they're usually taller than us, and they want to intimidate us. No, we're not going to be intimidated. We know what needs to happen here, and it's different from what's going on. So we can do the same kind of things with families. So we cover all of these different areas. Resources is another area that's huge, knowing who are all the organizations in the Valley. Where can you go to get a particular need met? And if we don't have that, we have extended network that we can reach out to find that as well. So I see Susan standing there, so I'm going to take that's as our time up. I wanted to just do one, if we could just get back. Yep, to that one. Yep. So when looking to choose a care manager or an aging life care professional, you want to look, are they a member of their professional organization? There are social workers who do this work, and so they might be part of the social work organization. We still encourage them to be part of ALCA. Are they certified? How many years of experience they have? How responsive are they? I mean, we tell you right in our contracts, if it's an emergency, you will hear from us in this much time. If it's, something that's not, you're going to hear from us. If it's Friday, you're not going to hear from us till Monday. You always know what to expect. That they have knowledge of the local area and resources, and what services do they provide, and do their fees align with what you're able to. So, Susan, once again, I thank you for inviting us to come up here and talk about care management. As you can tell, I love to talk about it. I love to do it. It's a wonderful job, and we're happy to serve. Thank you, Susan.
I invited these other speakers because I think they do a great job, and I didn't pay them to say nice things, but obviously I appreciate what they do, and it's nice to work with professionals in this area. I don't know about your family. My grandmother, I was a lawyer. I mean, she was a young grandmother, so I was a lawyer and actually doing this kind of stuff, and she was kind of making a mess of her life. And I mentioned to her, I said, Grandma, Nana, there's some things you might want to talk to your attorney about. And she basically told me, and I'm an idiot, and I don't know anything, and I was frozen at age 12 in my family. We're all frozen at some other age with our parents and grandparents. We're not a grown-up. You're still a little kid. Well, that makes it kind of hard when you're trying to be helpful to them. That's another advantage to having a professional care manager, somebody who's independent. The same thing with my clients. Their kids, they're concerned, and the parents ignore them. But when I talk to them and explain these are the things, they actually listen to me. I guess because I'm not a family member. Like my grandmother thinks I'm an idiot. She's long gone. But anyway, and she actually made a terrible mess of her life at the end. The other thing I want to remind you about, if you're a caregiver spouse, you need to understand statistically you're most likely to predecease the one you're caring for. You get exhausted, and tomorrow's not going to be better than today, or maybe for a blip it's better than today, but in the long haul it's all going on that downhill slope that you saw from Christine and Karen's slides. Also, when you're a caregiver spouse, you don't have the energy to enjoy the relationship. I mean, you're just so exhausted. You don't dare leave the house. So there are really advantages to think about leaning on professionals to help pick up that burden, because they know what they're doing, and they haven't had 24-hour shifts for the last 3 years, where you can't really think straight anymore. Anyway, I'm a huge fan of that, obviously, because I think they provide a great service to the individuals and their families. Well, now we're going to segue onto something different, totally different. As I mentioned before, our wondrous government, and they were doing the best they could with what they were thinking at that time, and given the dreadful times of World War II, they were testing all these atomic bombs to see if they really worked. And, we here in the West are considered I grew up in Boston. There was a map of the United States when I was growing up that showed Boston and New York City, and the East Coast had quite a few things. And then there was kind of nothing in Ohio and Tennessee and so forth. And then there was a pretty big blip around Chicago. And then there was nothing until you got to San Francisco. Well, I think the whole East Coast thinks that there's nothing out here. So, bombing at Hanford or down in the the Four Corners, who cares? There's nobody there anyway. Well, there were people there. There's still people there. And because of that, a number of people were harmed. And thankfully, our government finally noticed that and is doing something about it. There's a program that provides some benefits to people who are considered downwinders, and Sean is the Idaho representative of that. Sean Beck is a fabulous attorney. I've worked with him a number of years. As many of you know, I'm a certified elder law attorney, one of about 500 nationwide, and Sean also is one of those individuals. So I'm very proud to introduce him to you, and he's going to explain to you about that program, and then you get me. So, Sean, please, if you'd come share your information. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm proof that Susan hangs out with young people still. So I've been an attorney since about 2008 here in Idaho, and for the last decade I've been doing a lot of this, of the elder law, and Susan's one of the wonderful people who helped introduce me to this area of law. I'm going to try to pull up my slides here. That may be difficult. I may skip it if I can't figure this out. Or is this the wrong computer? No. Or, yeah, if you're the Mac person.
Are you?
I've got this right here, if that works.
Oh, and is that your computer down there?
This is not a computer.
Okay. So you want to put your?
I'm going to start either way.
Okay.
While we're here. So.
Let's have you come over here.
Yeah. So I've been, for the last 6 months ago, like out of nowhere, the Big Beautiful Bill Act was passed, and in the very end of that bill, they tacked on the RECA Act, and they increased it to. It's been lobbied for a dozen years or so. People in Idaho and Utah have been trying to expand this act. It's been around since 1990, and it. Initially back in 1990, it was limited to just small portions of Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada. From the year 1951 to 1992, they detonated over 928 atomic bombs down in the southern corner there of the West, right outside of California, Nevada, and then all the downwind. As the Earth shifted and the winds blew, it blew into Idaho, it blew into Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, and beyond. Well. While it still isn't, it doesn't give anyone in Montana or Washington any relief. At least Idaho has now been included, and there's people that have been doing this, tirelessly advocating for this, and they're happy to see that it's done. And so I want you guys to all think, who do you know who's lived in any of these places between 1951 to 1962? Who do you know? Maybe it's you. Maybe it's a family member or a loved one, or maybe a deceased parent who had suffered from cancer, where the cancer rates here are 10 times higher or more than other places in the nation, and that's why. Because of the 928 atomic bombs that were detonated. So in 1990, it was a $50,000 reimbursement. Since that time, it's now a $100,000 reimbursement, and the way that you get this is by you apply for it, and it's a federal program. So you have to. There's some things you have to prove, and I'm going to go through that in a minute, especially if my slides come up. If not, you guys all have also a trifold in your.
Do you want to email it to me and I?
I'll just talk through it.
I'm so sorry.
I'm good at talking too.
Okay.
So, there's 4 different categories in this. So there's the downwinders, and that's the one that we're going to focus on today. There's also people that if you worked at a uranium mine and you got cancer, you qualify under the uranium workers. There's people that worked at nuclear facilities, like in southeast Idaho, that maybe they got exposed to it. So on-site workers, the Manhattan Project waste people. So all these things fall under this umbrella of this RECA Act. But in Idaho, we have a lot of people that just were the downwinders, that were just exposed to it. I've got a friend who was born and raised in Idaho City, for example, and she remembers playing in like piles of yellow cake from the mines up there. 4 of her siblings, of the 5, I think, 4 of them died from cancer. So the increased risk that we had here is really, really significant. So who can make this claim? Who can get it? Who's entitled to this? It's $100,000 tax-free claim. It doesn't count toward, also if you're on Social Security, Medicaid, or any other government benefits, it doesn't count against that eligibility. So you don't get kicked off of the programs, and it's $100,000. And so for most of us, it's being presence in Idaho. So you can file this on your own behalf. If you've got a deceased spouse, you can file it on their behalf, and the spouse can be entitled to the entire amount. You can file on behalf of your deceased parents or step-parents, for that matter. In those cases, you'll split that $100,000 between the other surviving siblings. Or you can even file on behalf of grandparents. So areas of exposure. So Idaho is what I mentioned. That's probably what most of us will run into. But the other day, I was doing some planning with some folks, and they told me, "Look, Dad's got cancer, and we're not sure how much longer he has." And I asked, "Well, where'd he grow up?" And they said he grew up in New Mexico. And I looked at the map, and I said, "Well, here, take this, call these people, and try to get some money for this, because he was a downwinder." So there's New Mexico, parts of Utah, and all this stuff. If you look in that brochure again, you're not going to remember it, and I'm speaking too fast to jot this stuff down. But just know that you can look all this stuff up later with materials provided. The timelines are important to know, though. So for Idaho, you had to have been in Idaho between January 21st, 1951 to November 6th, 1962 for at least 1 year. So that's a lot of people. A lot of people in this room. Same thing with Utah. Same dates. It can be a little bit different for some of the other jurisdictions. There's actually 1 month from July 30th, 1962 to July 31st, 1962. So that full month of July, where you just have to have been here for 1 month. And because the downwind exposure was so great during that month, you qualify if you were in that area and had cancer. So New Mexico is the one, they go back clear to 1944 when the original testing started. There are about 20 different types of cancer that qualify for this. And what I've found is it's really the majority of the ones that you see. So leukemia, melanoma, lymphomas, thyroid, breast, esophageal, stomach. The list goes on, but it's in that. And really, if I stress anything today, it's just call. Call the Downwinders Association, walk through it with them. They have an office on Glenwood. They've got someone local here in Idaho to help walk through this. And then my office is also here to help with these. But check and see, because maybe they've changed the names of cancers over the years. Maybe they called it something that it's different in different reports, and there's people that help review this for you. And so there's 2 ways to apply for this. You can apply either on your own, and you can go if you got online and looked up RECA, the RECA statute. There's a .gov website, www.justice.gov, and that website will have the form for you, and you can do it on your own. And you can get the evidence that I'm mentioning on your own. They like to see specific documents and things. And then you can do all the filing on your own, and then no one's taking any of your money. When I do this, though, we get what's called a contingency fee. And the Downwinders Association, they kind of help. So they're the onboarding association. If you call them, they've got about a 4% contingency fee. So if you don't get a claim, if you don't get paid, if they don't get paid either. So they help do a lot of the background stuff for you. They help really dig in to showing this proof, like because they want birth certificates, they want death certificates, they want marriage certificates. It's kind of a lot, and this organization spends a lot of time helping gather, and they've done this since 1990, and they know exactly what the Department of Justice wants to see, and then that's when I come into play at the end, where I'm the attorney that does the filing and the final review and the tracking and all that stuff. And so you end up paying around 6% or so of a contingency fee if you use us. I'm just happy to tell people about this, frankly. Because it's wonderful to help pass out checks for once, instead of as attorneys, usually we just collect them from people. So it's been a really fun area of law for me in my office to deal with. So in addition to reviewing your application and pulling the attorney into this Downwinders Association, they've got like a 95% success rate in getting these done correctly for people the first time. So I really strongly recommend using them. What are my minutes at? I missed the sign. 2 minutes? Perfect. That's what I thought. Exactly. So. Like I said, we come in and we help interface with the Department of Justice. We track the case for you. We keep you updated, and then we help to plan for those benefits too once you get them. If you have someone who's terminal, let them know. If someone has a doctor that's saying they're terminal, then you can speed up the process. You can get it potentially done within 3 months is the fastest we've seen it in a terminal case, but you really have to follow up. You really have to highlight it to them in the Department of Justice and get your ducks in a row and all the dots connected for them, because they won't connect dots themselves. It's up to us or you. If for other non-terminal cases or cases where someone's deceased, it's taking about 5 to 6 months to get this done. There are a lot of different places you can go to get all the documents you need. Old yearbooks online, you can find troves of documents these days. So if you have any questions, the Downwinders Association, they really are the #1 place I recommend calling. My office is also available if any questions come up, and we'll be here to chat as well. Thank you.
Yeah, there were materials in there on the left side of your brochure, the folder that we gave you. There are materials about the Downwinders Association. It's toward the back. There's a little blue thing. There's another materials about long-term care planning. Sean's firm does many things in estate planning, but he also significantly helps people with Medicaid program for seniors who qualify for that, to help pay for long-term residential care, or for disabled family members who have that need. And you have to have an advocate. I'm sorry, my version of how our government and even large institutions like banks, they get rid of anybody who knows anything because they don't cost too much money. They don't train people anymore. So you need somebody who's an advocate, who knows what the rules are and how to get through that. So if you have those issues, of course, contact Sean. Okay, what I'm going to talk about is, I called it, I think, chicken soup or something like that. There's just lots of little things I wanted to bring up for you. First of all, on the right-hand side, there's this health document. These forms are now available on my website at no charge, or you can fill this out, and before you fill it out, by the way, Valentine's Day is Saturday, so you could fill this out, before you fill it out, make copies and give it to people as a gift for Valentine's Day and say, fill this thing out. Or tell them again to go to my website and they can do it. There are instructions on how to do it. What's different about this, I think I probably said this last year if you came to this. Our legislature passed, I think, the worst law I've ever seen that went into effect in the summer of 2023. They were new health documents. They changed the standard to be, what you had to do is you had to piece a piece of paper that said your name, your birth date, that was new, your address and phone number. And then you had to sign it. That was it. You got to say whatever you wanted to say. They did say if you listed your agents who were going to talk to the doctor on your behalf, that they wanted to know their relationship to you, your spouse, your friend, your next door neighbor, your kids, whatever. I mean, that's insane. So you could, and you could say, this is my living will, which is end of life choices, this is my health power of attorney, but they gave you zero language to write down. And I can tell you, I've been doing this a long time. If I had a blank sheet of paper and I had to write that stuff down, I'd make a mess of it. I have to look at what the law has said in the past. So that's what I've done. I've taken the old form and modified it for the new one. But what you care about in here that's different, when we talk about end-of-life choices in Idaho, we now have in here medical assistance in dying. That's assisted suicide. It's on the top of page 2. It's illegal in Idaho. I don't believe in my lifetime it'll ever be legal in Idaho, but I don't care. There are 12 states now, and our adjoining state, Washington, Oregon, California, Montana, they all allow it. So what it says in this, if you choose that box, it says, okay, if that happens, take me to a jurisdiction that allows it. Most of my clients who are actually following through when they check this box have cancer, and the pain is so severe with the cancer that they can't control it unless they make them a total zombie, and who wants to be a total zombie every day? But the idea of looking at tomorrow and next week and next month, you still have that pain or worse pain is sort of like, I don't think I really want to live my life this way. So some people choose this alternative. The next one is the voluntary stopping eating and drinking. The people who usually follow through on this, and in my short experience, are people who have progressive diseases and they don't want to be at the end stages. I'm talking about ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease or dementia. All the women in my family live to be old, at most of them anyway. And when they get to be old, they're a mess, and they all have dementia, and they die in their late 90s. And they can't clean themselves up, they can't feed themselves, they don't know who they're talking to, they can't do anything. And many people don't want to be in that stage. So if you do the voluntary stopping and eating and drinking, and you have a team to help you get through that process so it truly is a good death for the person who's choosing it and a good death for the people who are loved ones and care about you, then people are gone usually within a week or 10 days. So that, these are choices. All of you know I'm a dog lady. I've always had dogs. Now I have this super duper dog named Willie. Willie showed up last March because Katie, the dog I had before that, died in February. I'm a dog lady, and I've always had dogs, and so I waited 3 weeks. I made myself wait 3 weeks. And then I looked on the website. I will not go to the Humane Society because I want every dog, so that's not really practical, and I don't want my heart broken. So anyway, I looked on the website. I wanted an old dog, and the only one available was a Willie, and he was 11. He's a half greyhound, half lab, black lab. And he'd been there 6 months. Somebody had traded him in because they had a new dog, and they decided they liked the new dog better, which just, it's beyond my comprehension. And he was there so long, they sent him to the state penitentiary, so he learned some extra manners. He is the best dog I've ever had. He actually does what I say. My staff loves him. Half my clients want to take him home. They actually gave him tricks. So we don't know. They didn't bring us a little card that says he knows these tricks, so you wave your hands around, he does something. He's cool. Okay, but when Katie was dying, she was awful. It's a poor dear. She just, I won't describe how vulgar all this stuff was, but you know what? I kept praying every morning. I'd say, I hope Katie's dead. I know that seems terrible, but I really did. I thought that would be better for her and definitely better for me because my heart was breaking. And she didn't die, but she was in worse and worse and worse shape. I took her to the vet. I had to, or I could have called, gentle goodbyes or something, but I couldn't watch her any longer like that. And if I can treat my pets with that kind of grace, it would be nice to be able to help some of the people I really care for who are in that horrid shape and do the same thing. So anyway, voluntary stopping eating and drinking is not going to the vet and waving goodbye. You make that conscious decision, and it can be a very comfortable process. So that's what's in here in the middle of page 3. You can, and you need to read through this at your leisure, but it says, a variety of things as to why it should go into effect. I no longer appear to desire to eat or drink. I appear to be indifferent to being fed. I don't willingly open my mouth. By the way, if somebody forces you to eat and you've made this selection, that is a crime. That is a battery. You say, I don't want to eat, they can't say, oh, you're stupid, you don't know what you're saying, you're just depressed. Okay, we're just going to shove this food into you. No, they can't do that. Anyway, so if you want that, you say yes. And you know what? Look at you. You're talking to me. I'm a lawyer. Obviously, you do think I want to control things. Of course I do. And I want to control things in a way that I think is appropriate for me when I'm talking about my own personal things, or for you, what your wishes are. Your wishes don't have to be mine. They need to be yours. And I want to see they're carried out. So that's why it's so critical to do these documents. You need to then give a copy to your agents, the people you've nominated to be able to speak on your behalf when you can't communicate effectively. And you need to give a copy to your doctor. You can give them to the hospitals. I don't know whether they'll take them unless you're actually showing up at their front door because you need to do something there, but give it to your doctor. They can give it to them. So, okay, that's one document. The next thing is we have, those of you who are my clients know that, and we keep expanding on it, we have a long laundry list of forms for you to fill out if you choose to or not. So certainly who gets the china and who gets the ring and who gets the gun, and pet care instructions, who gets to take care of your pets when you can't do that because you are incompetent, mentally or physically too ill to do it, or when you're dead. We have other things, and so I have a laundry list. That's the second document on the right side of the forms to fill out. If you should have them in your notebook, but again, as the years go by, we keep adding more and more. But they're also available on my website. So if you go to my website, all these free forms are available. My favorite, well, there are a couple I want to highlight. One is people to notify. I went to visit a friend in Boston, a college roommate, and we lived together after college. She still lives in Boston. And we get together a couple times, maybe every other year and talk on the phone every other month. And she said to me one day, "Susan, how am I ever going to know you're dead?" Well, that was an interesting question, and that's quite true. Nobody would ever know. She would never know. So I actually prepared a little list, who to contact when you're seriously ill or you're dead. Because if you looked in my address book, it is probably 60 years old. The poor thing is falling apart, and I am too lazy to think I'm going to start over. No, it's never going to happen. I have dead people in there. I have people I don't even know why I ever wrote their name down. I have no idea who they are. So if somebody looked at that when I'm dead, okay, who are we going to contact? They don't know. So that's one list. The other one is my favorite one, which is items to destroy. I really wanted to call it My Secrets. But if I called it My Secrets, that would be the first document anybody would ever look at in my book. And what this is, I have clients, I know they have the stuff, they don't tell me. I have clients who have illegal drugs. I have clients who have legal drugs that they stash in their refrigerator or someplace else. I myself have some of those. When the dentist gives me some extra pain pills for when I have something, and I store the rest of them. I don't use them all up. I don't throw them down the toilet. No, sir, I'm keeping those for some day that maybe I need them, which I've never used, but I feel good I've got them. Okay, there are other things. I have clients I know who have pornography. I mean, nobody tells me this stuff, but we're people. Some people think that's cool. I also have a box of letters I sent to my husband. I got married in 1969. I married a helicopter pilot in the Marine Corps. He went to Vietnam a couple of months later. I learned, by the way, to forge his signature within about 2 weeks because I knew I'd need that skill. But the other thing is I sent him a letter every day. I was a dutiful daughter, a bride. And I just felt, I thought that was something you had to do. That was something that family members would do. I have every one of those letters in a box, a cardboard box. It's all sealed up with tape in my basement. I was married 22 years. I've been divorced more than 30 years. I don't have the courage yet to open that box, but when I'm dead, I don't want anybody else to open it. I want that to be destroyed. That's the kind of things I'm talking about with this items to be destroyed. I've had a number of clients who say, destroy all my pictures. Do you want your pictures to show up, in the youth ranch or someplace else like that people paw through? I mean, and that actually happens. So anyway, so those are the kind of forms you can fill out. Now, I've got some new ones here for you. So the next one is, what's a go bag and do I need one? Oh, I didn't bring that today. Oh, well, that's okay. I have a transparent plastic backpack that's got all kinds of things in. And this go bag tells you what to put in it. This is if you have a health emergency, or God forbid we have a flood. Wouldn't it be nice to have some moisture, but not a flood level of moisture in Boise, or some crisis that you need to actually leave your house and know that you're not coming back within the next 72 hours. So that's a change of underwear and socks, your drugs, some couple of snacks, a bottle or two of water, something. And there's a laundry list and what to put in that go bag. So you might really think about putting one together and sticking it in the closet by the front door, and then putting a reminder on your calendar. So in 6 months, you take away the stale fish crackers and put in something that's fresh. Okay. Next one is planning your charitable legacy. I graduated from Cornell University a long, long time ago. And you may not know this, I graduated from the School of Hotel and Restaurant Administration. I obviously took quite a few turns in my life, and when I graduated, I was told, I was one of 4 women in the class, I was told I could aspire to be the head housekeeper of a large, nice hotel. It never occurred to me to do goal planning at that age, and that was definitely never going to be on my list, so obviously I segued away from that. But somebody from Cornell contacted me and said, we're coming through town, we want to talk to you about being an alumni and charitable giving. Well, what came of that is the woman who spoke to me has a class that she runs in the Graduate School of Business at Cornell University, and they talk about philanthropic giving. And I asked her, do you have a one-page handout on how to tell people what to look for when they're making charitable gifts? She said, no, but I'll give that to my graduate class. So that's this. That's what I gave you. That's the summary of what they came up with, what I thought was really helpful on what you're supposed to be focusing on. One of the primary messages, don't focus on what they spend on administrative costs. It takes money to run an organization. You cannot say, gee, because the executive director is getting $150,000, isn't that shameful? Well, that person obviously has a pretty high skill level, and because of that, they're able to raise more money, as opposed to somebody you're going to pay $30,000 to. What kind of incentive do they have, and what kind of skill level do they have to actually effectively run that nonprofit? So I'm just mentioning, look at this when you're thinking about doing significant charitable giving. The next one is your digital assets. Now, Sean, I'm very pleased. I know this is not nice. I'm so pleased you couldn't run that stupid PowerPoint. One of my employees calls me a techno-peasant. I'm proud of that designation. I do not care. Every time they update my phone, it works less than it did before. And if I could go back, but there's no way to say, wait, can we just undo that? No, you can't. So this is part of this technology that whether I like it or not, we're all stuck with. When people die, how are they going to get at your photos that are on the internet? How are they going to get at your emails? How are they going to get at all those things that you've stored on the computer, in the cloud, whatever that is? So this is another to-do list. Now, because I'm a certified Delaware law attorney, there was somebody obviously much smarter and more interested in this than me who put this together in one of the mailings I got from that organization. And this really is a to-do list. It tells you exactly what to do. Now, if you can't do this, which I never would be able to do this, go get a 12-year-old. They can do this for you. Your grandchild, the next door neighbor's kid, whatever. This is great. Look at this and really think about this seriously. And don't say, well, I'll get to this at Thanksgiving when they show up. Because are you going to be here at Thanksgiving? Will you even remember? No. If nothing else, mail this to your kids or your grandkids and say, next time you're over at the house, please help me with this. Because this is when you can't access it. When you've got a brain and you know what you're doing, of course you can get at that. But this is when you don't have a brain because you're incompetent or ill or you're dead. People will need to get to this stuff. So that's instruction list. Okay, the last one is how do you pay for long-term care? Now, Sean knows tons about that, and I know quite a bit. But what I'm talking about in the planning stage, so let's say you're never going to qualify for Medicaid. You don't want to qualify for Medicaid, because if you're a single person, you basically have to be down below $2,000. And if you're a married couple, you have to go through all these hoops. But let's say you've got money to pay, but you really want to get the best tax advantage. One of the ways of doing that, so I'm just going to pick on Mom. Mom has a brokerage account of $500,000. It's costing $15,000 a month for her to be in a nursing home facility. And she's got, maybe $5,000 a month income coming in between Social Security and pension. So she's short $10,000 each month. If she gives the $500,000 brokerage account to the kids. So she's got 2 kids. She gives it to them, and they now own it. And there's all, that's what we lawyers were fully employed doing, all these pieces of paper. But basically, we create an irrevocable trust, shove the money in there, and the kids then draw out that $10,000 each month to pay for mom's nursing home care. What happens at the end of the year, the kids are now, because the kids own this account, at the end of the year, the kids are going to get a tax deduction for the $10,000 per month that they paid for mom's care, because that's the code allows it. There's actually an example in the Internal Revenue Code that specifically describes this technique, which means then there'll be a pot of money because the kid is going to say, their taxes are going to get reduced. So maybe they end up saving $20,000 in the taxes that they have to pay. And then they can decide among themselves who's the one who should take that deduction. Should it be share the deduction or whatever. So there's a way, so now, because even though you still paid all those expenses out of pocket, you really end up with more money in the family's pocket. This is like the walnut and the pea. Okay, it's a legal thing. It's something that actually can happen so we can save more money for the family. It's a fairly elaborate process. It describes it here as best I can. But, I tell people I sell hot air and paper. I talk a lot, and then I come up with a lot of pieces of paper. And you're going to have a lot of pieces of paper if you do this, but when you're talking about saving tens of thousands of dollars for the family, it's worth doing. So that's the new high points that I wanted to talk to you about. I'm so pleased to be able to share this information and that you've chosen to spend your afternoon with me and these other speakers. Lastly, there's a green sheet in there, and I forgot to bring my $1 million up with me. But when you fill this out, and even if you don't fill it out, they'll give you $1 million. Give this to the ladies. This tells me, first of all, what can I do that's better? I keep trying to improve, and because of comments from people like you, there are all these little tweaks or big tweaks I can do to provide a better service to you. The other thing, though, is if you want to visit with me or want to visit with Washington Trust or Life Changes or the End of Life doula ladies, indicate that. I didn't put Sean's name down because he really encourages you to contact that, wherever the Downwinders Association, whatever it's called. If you want to talk to Sean about other information, his handout is in there and you can contact him directly. But if it's just the Downwinders, you really need to contact that other organization. So if you indicate you want to do that, fine, just check that box. If you're not getting my newsletter, I send out a blog twice a month, I try to. I write one that's one page, and then I do a video. Now, I told you I'm an idiot for the technology, so I did 2 videos last week. And my portion was on the bottom half, and the top half was just a blank box, which is just ridiculous. It should have just been me and the whole thing, but I pushed this wrong, stupid button. So now I have to do it over again, because I said to Terry, just tell the technology person, get rid of that black box. Well, they can't do that. But generally, I try to do 1 of written and 1 video, so I'm a little behind on the video. If you want to sign up for the blog, just indicate that, and we'll certainly mail that to you. It just goes out in bulk each time, because that's stuff that's relating to this area of the law. So lastly, so turn this in, they'll give you the $1 million. If you don't want to turn it in, they'll still give you the $1 million, just ask the ladies. And this is perfect. You drop it on the ground and see who picks it up, or give it to one of your grandkids. Do you have any questions for me or any of the other speakers? We have 10 minutes for questions. Yes, sir. By the way, Sean just let me know that they've printed those slides, so you can pick them up when you leave. He's happy to share those with you. Are there any other questions? Are you just overwhelmed with way too much information? Yes, sir.
Question, is it possible, just while watching your television or your MacBook, on Channel 7, it links something about Alzheimer and taking pills, and you indicate, yes, you're interested. Is it possible for your full name and address and the last 4 digits of your Visa card to show up on the screen, even though you've never dealt with those people before? Yes. And 4 minutes later, my phone rings from Visa fraud. Oh, we've detected fraudulent activity. We'll take care of it. Good. I thought they would block payments, but no, without telling me, he suspended my card. And you then, after a while, you go to usaa.com/refine, and there's a step to get your card back. So the bill showed up on my card, and I typed, without telling them I was a lawyer, I typed a note. I contest this. I never gave them my name, myself, any of the data whatsoever. They are fraudulent. They obtained it in fraudulent manner. Okay. Dial like back and forth, and then I get the word, okay, you are not going to be charged. Good. But a follow-up from USA Lady, we did not charge you because of your convincing letter. Those fraudulent pack after or something, they voluntarily decided not to charge me because they know they're guilty, although the staff members are probably not informed of the fraudulent manner in which they got you there.
It's awful. And you can't be smart enough to dodge all this stuff. I mean, I've been scammed. The employees in my office have been scammed. A number of my clients have been scammed. You just say, how could I be that stupid? Well, we're all that stupid, and they're clever about it. And I'm so grateful that you're available, Brian, and your bank. I mean, when I knew that happened, I called your bank, and because I bank with Washington Trust Bank, and they did backflips solving the problem. So, but you have to do it in a timely fashion, isn't it? Within 30 days or 10 days or 24 hours or something.
Yeah, so depending on consumer versus businesses, but the primary thing is you need to contact as quickly as possible when you realize that you're a victim of fraud. You want to make that contact as quickly as you can. Susan?
Yes.
A year and a half ago, my dear wife died peacefully. She did not want hospice. She died at home. I had to call 911 and policemen came. It turns out if you die in the hospital or you die under hospice care, it is an attended death. If you die at home with your 90-year-old husband, 60-year-old middle son, it is an unattended death, and they treat it as if she were 22 years old, overdosing on meth. So the police came, nothing to be suspicious. They called the coroner. The duty coroner came, magnificent young man, but levothyroxine, lisinopril, he collected her 3 prescriptions because it was an unattended death. I mentioned this at the VFW. A lot of the guys did not know that, and I thought I'd mention it here because I did not hear that exception stated. Is that a surprise to any of you? Raise your hand. A few. Okay. Thank you for letting me speak.
Oh, of course, yeah. And a long time ago, I mean, I've been doing these blogs for so long. I wrote something about that. When somebody dies unattended at home, you can call 911. You can also call the coroner. The coroner's the one who has to come and certify that somebody's dead. Yeah, and it's, it's a beginning and it's an end. So hopefully, that actually happens. Let me mention one thing, and this is your hint of the day. If you live alone or you know somebody who lives alone, twist their arm, make them do it. They need to make a contact with the same one person every day. I have too many clients who have died at home alone, and nobody knows, and somebody comes 2 days later, a week later. That's awful. That's just awful, and that's not necessary. So make it the same one person. Now, my father-in-law was an absolute crab and worked hard at being grumpy, and he was very successful. I once showed him the Grumpy Old Men movie because I thought he would find that funny. I thought those two guys were so funny. He only cared about Anne Margaret, who was the cute little blonde. You know, he didn't get it at all. Anyway, I couldn't call him every day because he wouldn't answer the phone. He was about 10 blocks from me. If I went to his house every day, that'd make him mad. He wouldn't like that. So I'd only go on Saturdays. We'd drink a whiskey. I'd come back the next Saturday. He fell down on Tuesday. And the cleaning ladies came on Thursday. Found him on the floor, still on the floor. You know, he ended up in the intensive care at St. Luke's, was there a month, and then went across the streets to the Elks, and then went to a nursing home for a while and died. That is not what anybody wants. At least he was still alive. But I've had clients who've fallen on the floor and been there for days and in the same shape he was. I've had clients fall on the floor and be there for a week or more. The worst one was somebody died at home, and his nephew, who was taking care of him, was kind of depressed, and he was staying in his uncle's apartment. And when he came, the uncle was dead, so the nephew just closed the door. And then the nephew, I'm talking months later, got the flu or something and didn't go to work. So somebody came from work to find out where he was, and I guess the mail was piled up outside the door, and then the police came in, and then they found this dead body, which is mummified, in the back room because he'd been there so long. I mean, this is wrong. That's why I'm saying, that poor man who died had a daily contact with somebody who was out to lunch, but please encourage anybody that you know that lives alone to have the same daily call. Now, you could be a text or an email, or you can call. I talked to a woman this morning who lives alone, and she said, well, I don't really want to bother anybody. I said, okay. And she has a flip phone. She doesn't want to deal with any of this computer stuff. I said, look, you call your sister, who's in Ohio, at 10 o'clock every morning. You leave a message on her phone that says, hello, I'm alive, and hang up, and do that every day. And then when you don't call, she'll know to call the neighbor here in Boise, who can come in and look in on you. Or if there's no neighbor, call the cops. The cops will come in and look and see if you're there or not. It's just common sense, and it's a courtesy. We all want that. We all trip over nothing. So this just gives you the peace of mind, and the people who care about you the peace of mind. So I am going to stop because it's 4 o'clock. But I want to thank you so much for coming. Please help yourself to more food and coffee and water. If you need What are you waving at me for?
I'm waving because the kitchen staff was kind enough to bring the goat with me. So if anybody wants some of this wonderful food to go, please.
That would be great. So help yourself to the food in those to-go boxes. And then turn in your little green sheet and get your $1 million. And thank you so much. Ask these questions of others if you like. Thank you.